Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, welcome back to another video, and here is the final part of ranking every episode of Witch. Now, you'll notice that my little sparkly star friend is gone. It's no longer Christmas. I recorded the first part of this on the 16th of December, and it's now the 10th of January, so it's been a while. There's been a big gap between when I recorded part 3 and when I'm recording part 4. Things sort of just went really wrong. We had a family emergency just before Christmas, and then it was Christmas, and then after Christmas, like literally within a couple of days, me and my partner both came down with COVID, and we unfortunately were not asymptomatic. We were quite ill. Not too bad. I mean, nobody was in hospital, nobody needed medical intervention, but we weren't well, and I definitely wasn't well enough to be making videos. But we are back. It's January. January sucks, but we're here, and I'm doing the final part, the top 10, and I'm super excited because obviously these are the episodes I love the most, so I'm really excited to talk about them. There are definitely some odd choices in here, I think. I think I've got some episodes in my top 10 that I'm pretty sure a lot of people would not rank in their top 10. Yeah, I'm sure some of you have been thinking already that like some of your favourites have already been mentioned, and you're probably thinking like, how is that not in the top 10? And if it's not, then what is? So yeah, definitely some choices in here that I feel like some of you are probably going to be a bit like, what, really? But what can I say? They're my favourites. So let's get into it, shall we? So coming in at number 10 on my list is N is for Narcissist. For the longest time, N is for Narcissist was my favourite episode, and you can probably guess why. It's a Cornelia-centric episode. It's the one where she gets to be the most badass. And that is the reason that I love it. It's the reason why it gets in my top 10. Over the years, I've realised that on the whole, it's not like as good an episode as I like thought it was, and I still love it, but it's not like, it's not top favourite. It's not number one material, I've realised. Obviously, Cornelia is a bit of a pain in the butt in it, and that's sort of the whole point. She is the narcissist in question. It's about how she's self-centered. But she does grow through the episode and learn that, she needs her friends and that she can't just do whatever she wants, that she has to be a team player if she wants to be a guardian. But it's a really enjoyable episode, I think, in so many ways. Like, I absolutely love getting to see Cornelia be, like, the Quinto guardian, having all 5 powers and being able to, like, do some really cool things, because when you can combine the powers yourself, she can create ice and she can do all these kind of things that the guardians, when they're separated, can't do, but she can do because she's got all 5 elements herself. And it's just, I mean, it's got some of the coolest fight scenes. And Cornelia, like, she's the perfect person to get all the powers because she is so confident and she is so, like, sure of herself. And I've always said that I don't see that as a negative. I know that a lot of the time, this idea that Cornelia is like, that she is so kind of full of herself. And I get that being vain and being self-centered isn't a good thing, but I always think she's not so self-centered that she doesn't care about anyone else. That's never been the case. She still cares and she still loves her friends. I think I always feel bad that sometimes people act as if confidence, especially in a young woman, is something to be ashamed of, that you shouldn't have confidence. And I think that's one of the things I've always loved about this episode, is just being able to see, the way that Cornelia manages to, like, hold her own against on her own, hold her own against all of the Knights of Destruction through sheer confidence and belief in her own ability. And that, to me, has always been really inspiring. That moment where she's like, you feed on fear, so eat hot confidence, so she just, like, channels, because they feed on negative emotions, but Cornelia has no negative emotions at this point because she's just so confident, so sure of herself. And that's such a good thing. And there is so many times in season 2 where they do that, where the bad guys feed off of negative emotion, but Cornelia, like, she's usually the one telling everybody else, zen, grande zen, because she, even though obviously she has negative emotions like everybody, she is really good at being able to put her her confidence first and use that as a barrier from the way that the Knights of Destruction feed off of pain and fear and sadness and all these things, whereas she manages to cover that up with her inner strength.
Now, you feed on fear, you'll choke on this. Eat hot confidence, Ice Cube!
And it's something I really admire about Cornelia, is a lot of why she's my favourite character. I've always looked up to Cornelia, I think. And I think when it comes to like picking a favourite character, sometimes you go towards the character that's most like you. For me, that would be Haylin. Me and Haylin are very similar. But I think the reason that I gravitate towards characters a lot of the time isn't so much because they remind me of myself, but because they are who I want to be, or what I want. That I see in them the traits that I wish I could embody in myself. And I think that's what I really see in Cornelia, is that she's always embodied the things that I wish I could embody in myself. I wish I could have her confidence, her strength, her drive. You know, like, that is what I want for myself. I want to be, you know, she reminds me of, like, you know, these days, like, you've got, like, gorgeous, gorgeous girl energy on Twitter. You know, like, I feel like Cornelia has gorgeous, gorgeous girl energy, and I want gorgeous, gorgeous girl energy. I want to be on Twitter just, like, talking about how I'm the most beautiful person and nobody can handle me. And I feel like that's what Cornelia's always had. And this is getting completely off the topic of N is for Narcissists. I'm just saying about this idea that why I love Cornelia so much is because she has all of these traits. And I think N is for Narcissist shows that off, and probably... And even though in that episode it is kind of shown to be a bit of a negative, it's also definitely a positive. And they're all cheering her on when she's fighting against the bad guys, because she is doing such a good job. And she's doing such a good job because she has that confidence, because she has that inner strength and that self-belief that allows her to fight with no fear. And of course part of that is channeled by the fact that she is so full of power. And it's, you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. But the great thing about Cornelia is that right at the end, you know, she is given the option by the mage to take that power and to be the sole guardian of the 5 elements. And for a moment you see her starting to, you know, her eyes glaze over, and you see that she is starting to fall under that spell. This spell that Nerissa uses on everyone, the chink in the armour of their soul. It is that confidence, it is that self-belief, and Nerissa's playing on that because she thinks, you know, if I can convince Cornelia that she's so good at what she's just done, that she's done such a good job, that she doesn't need the Guardians, then I can convince her to come over to my side while, you know, while she has all 5 powers, and I've got, like, this insane, like, beacon of power that I can use to my own game. But Cornelia, she starts to fall under the spell, but as soon as her friends show up, she snaps back out of it, and she says, you know, I think we'll go back to being witch. Being sea alone isn't as fun.
Cornelia, sole guardian of Kandrakar. I could make it so. Just open yourself to my power.
Your power?
Whoa, we interrupting something?
Will, how did you...
Ignore them. What do you need them for when you have real power?
I don't know, washing cars maybe? Or did you really think she'd do that for herself?
I think we'll go back to witch. Being sea alone, not nearly as fun.
Well, Cornelia needs the support of others. And I just think it's a great episode to showcase that entire, like, spectrum of Cornelia's character. How she can be bossy, she can be, you know, really hard to be around, she can be difficult, she can be a problematic person, she can be strong and confident and powerful and, you know, an incredible fighter when she needs to be. She can also be a good friend, she can also take accountability, and at the very end we have that bit where she steps up and she says, you know, it was all me, I screwed up and I don't want my friends to take punishment for something I did. And the thing is that even though Cornelia, I mean, yeah, at the start of the episode she wasn't really helping. The fact that she was stuck in Kandrakar fighting evil wasn't actually her fault. You know, that wasn't something she chose to do, but she doesn't want her friends to suffer when she was the one who wasn't stepping up and she was the one who wasn't doing enough work. And you know, even though she spent all day fighting evil, she's like, no, I'll do it myself because it's my responsibility and I need to take accountability for what I've done wrong. And from that point on, we never really see Cornelia do that again. Like, in the very next episode, we see Irma play exactly the same thing, where she, you know, tries to take credit for what her friends had done. But we never really see Cornelia fall back into that problem of being so self-centered. For the rest of the season, she is generally always being a good person. We don't really see that you know, her be so self-centered that it negatively impacts her friends. And she's grown as a person. And I love that. I love that for her. And I just, she is my favourite character. And it's a great study in her character, is the thing. Is that N is for Narcissist is just one big character study of Cornelia. And I love it. But like I say, I don't think it makes... It used to be my favourite because of that. But I think, in retrospect, I don't think it's as good an episode as I used to think it is. I think I was obviously wearing my favourite character goggles. But I still think it's a top 10 episodes because it's still an episode that I think is really good and a really great character study. And that's why I've placed it at number 10. Number 9 on my list is A Service to the Community. Service to the Community is an episode I just find absolutely hilarious. I think it's one of the only, like, true comedy episodes. And I think that's kind of because the writer said that when they first were given the series, they were told it was supposed to be like a kind of slice of life comedy, but with like fantasy battles thrown in. And it was only when they got to like a certain number of episodes that the producer said, actually, no, we want to make it like a full fantasy series. And that was when they could go in a bit more heavy on like the darker elements. And I think A Service to the Community really shows what the show like originally was supposed to be, this comedy type thing, because it really is, like, from start to finish, just a hilarious riot. But for me, I still love that. And it's like, if the whole series had been like that, it probably would have got old fast. But because it's like a really early episode, it's like, what, episode 5, I think, of the entire series, it's like, it just seems like a fun episode. You know, like when Supernatural does like their comedy episodes. I mean, to be honest, I think they got too frequent as the series went on, but in the earlier seasons, when they were still like few and far between, you were like, oh yay, a fun episode, yay, that breaks up the tension. And I think that's what Service to the Community is it's just like a really fun little episode. And for me, that makes it one of the best, because it's kind of an outlier, because it's like this one kind of proper comedy episode. I think that makes it stand out from all the rest, and that's why it's one of my favourites, because it is so funny. So it's the episodes where the girls are supposed to be doing community service, they call it. Now maybe that's a thing in America. To me, community service is when you've done a crime and you're punished by picking up litter at the side of like the M74, or you're cleaning graffiti off the side of buildings. Like, it's not something you would do for school. I don't really know what that is. Like, work experience, maybe? Charity work? I really don't know. But they call it community service. So the girls are all doing like their own tasks. So Cornelia has to help out in her sister's preschool. Tarani and Irma have to go to City Hall and lick envelopes. And as they discover, you're supposed to do that with sponge tongues, but they were licking them with their own tongues, which still makes me laugh. Will and Helen are repainting the train station. But very quickly that's like not the plot anymore, because what happens is that like they discover this ancient Meridian writing in the train station and Will keels over. And then they become convinced that like there's a Meridian beast walking the streets, and Will becomes convinced that it's Professor Collins because he's been hanging around Will's mum, you know, obviously because later on in the series they end up dating, but at this point in time they're not. But he comes round to discuss like PTA stuff with Susan, and Will becomes convinced that he is a beast of Phobos. He's trying to infiltrate her life. He's trying to like get in about her mum, and of course this is all complete nonsense. But the girls are young and dumb, and they all believe her. So it just becomes complete chaos. Like they follow Mr. Collins. They see him going into a pet shop and coming out with like a bag of bugs, and you know Cornelia's no, Irma's like that they're going to eat them, and then they see him buying glue, and Cornelia's like it's to glue on his realistic rubber human face.
What did he buy? Glue.
Glue for what?
Glue to stick on his realistic rubber human face!
Live crickets, like 2 pounds of them.
That's way too much for fishing.
But not too much to eat.
Ew!
And Caleb this whole time is just in the background, like with his head in his hands, being the only sane man, because he thinks this is silly, and he keeps pointing out the things that are wrong. He's like, you know, how could a man from Meridian know enough about Earth history to be a history teacher? And they're like, nah, silly. Don't be silly. There's ways around it. It's like, I mean, how could an Meridian man know enough to run an Earth bookshop? But there you go. And it just becomes more chaotic from then on. So then, like, they try and fight Professor Collins so that they can hit him with the Heart of Kandrakar and reveal his true form, which of course reveals absolutely nothing because he's just a regular man. But now he's unconscious, and like, great, now we're gonna have to take him home because we've knocked him out. So then they're flying him over the city so that nobody sees them dragging a wet unconscious man up a hill in a wheelbarrow at midnight. But then they get distracted and they drop him and he falls in someone's swimming pool. So then they have to go and drag him out of the swimming pool, and then they're pushing him up a hill in a wheelbarrow at midnight.
Hey, you're only supposed to transform for emergencies.
Well, what do you call pushing a wet, unconscious man up a hill in a wheelbarrow at midnight? Sorry.
Unnecessary if you'd listen to me.
And then they take him back to his flat, and they're like, how are we supposed to, like, justify this? What do we do? So then they're like, oh, take Mr. Scales' lizard out and sit him on him and cover him in bugs and pretend that Mr. Scales was trying to eat him. So then Mr. Collins comes into school the next day and he's like, I woke up and my lizard was trying to eat me. And then Susan's like, oh, I need to go to an emergency block meeting because some weirdo's been swimming in all the neighbourhood pools. And it's just pure chaos from start to finish. It's just silliness. It's just silliness. But I think what makes it great is because it is so early on in the series that it kind of makes sense, you know, that the girls are still so inexperienced with this, that they've got tunnel vision, you know, they for some reason assume that he's a Meridian beast coming to invade their lives, and they can't see past that. So they're like, yeah, we have to go fight him. And then, you know, then it goes wrong, and then they're like, okay, now we're gonna have to use our powers to try and cover all this up. And then they, you know, mess that up, and then he's in the pool, and it works, especially at that point in the series, because it is like they are still so young and so inexperienced. And they end up, what I love is that this actually gets brought up again in Q is for Quarry, because in Q is for Quarry, Will becomes convinced that her dad's new fiance is Nerissa in disguise, which I can kind of understand considering Nerissa has been playing that gambit for like most of season 2. You know, she loves to glamour into other people to try and confuse you. And she's convinced that Serena is Nerissa. She also thinks that Serena and Nerissa are spelled too similar, which they're not, but okay. And the girls actually point out, like, to Will, you know, we've done this exact thing before, remember? Like, you thought Professor Collins was a beast, and then we dragged him around half of Heatherfield and dropped him in all the pools. Like, we've done this before, and it didn't work out very well for us. I think you need to tread carefully here. But Will still doesn't see it. She's still determined. But I like the fact that they brought that up, and it shows how much they have grown. The fact that they're like, look, remember the last time you thought that about one of your parents' new people, and it went, you know, we did some really stupid stuff. Like, we're not going to do that again. We've learned. And I like that, because it's like, look, they have learned a lot in the space of time since that happened. And it works as such a silly episode because it's so early on, because they still haven't really learned enough about about anything really to think critically and look at this objectively. And over time they do, and they learn not to do that again. In fairness, they do end up following Elion's boyfriend around a theme park in Princess Revealed, doing very much the same thing. But at the same time, I can get it, because when people can shapeshift and you don't know who they are, it is going to eventually make you very suspicious of literally everyone you meet when you can't tell if they're real or they're someone in disguise. But yeah, I love that episode. I think it's hilarious. It's also the first time we see the Infinite City. It's the first time we see the mage. So it's got some good lore in there as well, some good plot in there as well. Great episode, top notch. Number 8 on my list is definitely a weird one to put in. Even as I'm saying this now, I'm like, you are so strange. Because I'm like, this has always been one of my favourite episodes, and could I explain to you why? I don't know. Like, I'm about to try and explain to you why I ranked it so high, and I don't even entirely know. It's Return of the Tracker. I just really like Return of the Tracker. It's just always been an episode that I really enjoyed, and I don't... Maybe it is kind of in the same vein as Service of the Community, because it's just I like it because it's fun, but like, I don't know, it's just always been an episode that I love. It's one of the ones I watch the most. You know what I was saying about when you're just sitting about and you want to watch an episode of Witch? Return of the Tracker is one of the ones I go to most, because it's just one that I really enjoy. And it is a bit lighter than some of them. Like, sometimes you don't want to be watching an episode like, you know, like Parents' Night, where you're like, I'm going to be miserable by the end of this. Sometimes you want to watch an episode that's a bit more cheerful, and Return of the Tracker is that. It's got so many funny things. So it's the episode where we first encounter VMJ, Vance Michael Justin, apparently the who's a teen boy that people liked. I want to say Justin Bieber, but at the same time I'm like, no, not Bieber. I feel like Vance Michael Justin's cooler than Bieber ever was. But I can't think, like, One Direction, maybe? That kind of thing. The teen heartthrob of the time. The yeah, in my mind I'm like the JTT, I suppose, of the time would be the Jonathan Taylor Thomas is probably the one I would think of more, but that shows my age. So Vance Michael Justin, and he's like this singer slash actor, teen heartthrob dude, and he's got a new movie out where he plays some kind of elf, Trendle Blotton. And the girls are all really excited to see it, and apparently so is literally everybody else in this city. Apparently everyone in this city is obsessed with Vance Michael Justin, parents included, just everyone. So they're all queuing up to go and see this movie, but while they're at the queue for the movie, the Tracker comes to Earth, and the Tracker is definitely one of the coolest witch villains. He is basically this kind of scarecrow-like thing. He looks like he is a walking corpse. He's like all kind of black and charred, and he's got like horrible eyes and teeth, and he is genuinely quite creepy. Like, design-wise, he's quite spooky. He's got like a big hat, big coat. He's got a dog that is called Sniffer. It's like an evil dog that can smell stuff from miles away and hunt you down. And the whole point of the Tracker and Sniffer is that they track and they sniff. Wherever you are, they will find you. So they've been sent to Earth to try and find Caleb. And he's not doing such a good job of evading them when he's walking around with, you know, the stinkiest being in the universe, Blunk. So the girls realise that they're going to have to go and fight this, obviously, because they can't just have the Tracker wandering around the city centre. But at the same time, they don't want to lose their place in the queue for VMJ. And I kind of like, I like this kind of thing, because it's like, I like seeing the girls having to decide between... And I think this is another one of the things where they've definitely grown over time, and I'm going to talk about this a bit more. You know, that they are still teenage girls, and they still have their own things that they want to do, but they have to also understand that they are now magical protectors of the universe, and they have other priorities that they have to consider. And this is one of those times that I suppose they're really faced with that dilemma. You know, they really want to be there for the premiere of this film of this guy that they love, but at the same time they also have to go and fight a monster, and they can't just say, I'm not going to go and fight the monster because I want to go to VMJ. Like, you can't do that, because they need to be protecting the world. That's their job. And I think it's a really good kind of like look at that, and it's a nice thing to look back on later in the series when you see, you know, a really direct comparison is O's for Obedience, where, you know, they are once again, they're at the VMJ concert, but they need to go and save Caleb from Nerissa. And, you know, Irma complains because she's like, I can't believe I had to leave my concert early. But Cornelia steps in and she's like, basically says, like, get your priorities in order. And it's like, look how much they've grown since, you know, like, the girls are all like this. It's like, you know, they think Irma's completely, like, off the rails for thinking that they should stay at the VMJ concert. Whereas back then, they were completely happy to do 4 of us go and fight and 1 of us stay in the queue.
Your turn. We've got to start fighting for seeds soon. What happened? Long chain. Longer story.
Whereas, you know, by the time we get to O's for Obedience, they are like, look, VMJ or VMJ Shmee MJ, like, we've got the world to save and our friend is in danger. We're going to go do something about it. And it's like, again, it's like, look how much they've grown. And I like having these things to look back on and say, look how far they've come from when they were just young girls who didn't understand the responsibility that they had to when they were they were like a year older, and they've learned a lot by then. Other than that, though, the Return of the Tracker is just really funny. You've got the whole bit where Caleb and Blanc are babysitting Irma's brother, and then Yan Lin has to show up because, 1, because the Tracker's out looking for Caleb, and 2, because Caleb is an absolutely terrible babysitter and Irma's house is getting destroyed.
Chris, enough fish hockey. You know what's fun? Sitting still.
So she comes in with her cookie bribe and fixes everything, and then Caleb's skateboarding down the main street. Once again, just Caleb has so many scenes of being cool, like Caleb snowboarding, mummerboarding, Caleb sliding up Cedric's back on a gold tea tray, Caleb skateboarding, Caleb shredding a guitar on the school roof. Caleb just has so many really cool scenes. Like, no wonder that guy's my favourite character, because, I mean, look at this guy. Look at him. Look at him. He's so cool.
Don't you even know?
And it's got some absolutely great lines, like some really funny lines. Like I said, like Yan Lin and her cookie bribe, or when she's like, Mister, I can evade the tracker without help from guardians, and Chris throwing food at Caleb's head. It's funny. There's so many funny bits. The entire scene with Cornelia and Caleb standing at the poster cracks me up. It's just a great episode. It's just one that I really enjoy. I think Return of the Tracker is also the one where Caleb and Blanc steal a taxi and go on a joyride. So just a lot of really fun bits in that episode. And for me, it's just one that I really enjoy. And we get to see the Tracker. And, you know, he's cool. Unfortunately, he talks in that episode, and it's kind of weird because he never talks again because they decided he was scarier silent, but it's great. I love that episode, and I'm sorry if you think it's too high, because I completely understand if you think that's way too high in the list for it, but for me, it's a fave, so. Number 7 on my list is The Final Battle. Now, I said that Z is for Zenith was my 51st on the list, second from the bottom, because I didn't think it was a very good finale, but The Final Battle is a fantastic finale. It is absolutely one of the best episodes of the entire series. I just love it. It works so well as a finale. It works so well as a final battle, you know what I mean? Like, it actually feels like you can feel the tension, you can feel the build up as we go to the palace to face Phobos, to get Elion back. It's just so good from start to finish. It's just such a perfect episode. It's so well written and I just love it so much. Like, it is a fantastic piece of television right here. So just, I honestly think like the actual flow of the narrative is just so good. Like, it starts out, they're planning, I mean, the very start of the episode is Caleb talking about how dire things have become in Meridian, the fact that the rebels are living in camps now and they can't go home. We get this shot of the Meridian village centre, and like all the shops are closed and there's no one there. It's deserted. The signs are blowing in the wind and everyone's living in like the valleys because they can't go home. Like, it's become such a dire situation in Meridian that everyone has had to flee the town, and it's really bad. So they're, you know, the girls and Caleb and Blanc are all in the basement and they're trying to decide on how they can get into the palace without being seen. And more to the point, how do they get an entire army of rebels into the palace? Because the palace is up high. It's like on top of like this kind of big hill thing. It's not even a hill. I don't really know what it is. It's like, it's a big thing. Anyway, it's like a cliff kind of. And it can see in every direction. So they've got no way of getting all the rebels into the castle without being seen. It's just not going to happen. And, you know, we saw in the Battle of the Meridian Plains that, you know, it's going to turn out the same way. It's just going to be a big all-out war. So they're trying to decide on how they're going to get into the castle. So, you know, we start out, in narrative form, you know, we start out, we've got what's the situation in Meridian? And then we've got strategizing meeting. You know, how are we going to do this? Which makes so much sense. Like, it's just, this is what I mean, is it's just so well done, like, as an episode. And they come up with this idea while using the thingy for Will's dormouse, the run, that if they could use portals and they could create a portal from the rebel camp in Meridian to Earth, take everyone onto Earth, and then go through a second portal back into Meridian inside the palace. And they could take the entire army basically through like a secret passage through Earth, which is such a clever idea. I fucking love that. It is genius. So Caleb, Will and Cornelia go to Meridian and they find the place that they're going to create the second portal into the palace. And they create a portal and find that it's landed in someone's kitchen. But as it turns out, it's actually a model home. It's a new development, and it's the show home for prospective buyers. So there's not going to be anybody coming in and out of it. So they create the second portal back into the rebel camp. So they take everyone through this random show home kitchen, which is so cool. And I love it. The fact that there's like an entire scene where it's like, you know, people like talking about like the final moments where they go into the epic battle standing in this show home kitchen. I love it. And then they all go to Meridian, and then they go and they infiltrate the palace. Meanwhile, Matt is kicking about on Earth. He's following Will, because he obviously knows that Will is a guardian, but Will doesn't want Matt to help because he's just a regular human, but Matt wants to help because he is Elion's friend and he cares about her and he wants to help. So he ends up coming along anyway, even though no one told him to. He just shows up with Blanc onto Meridian, and it's like, oh god, please stop. What are you doing, you silly boy? And they're like, Matt, oh my god, you've got no powers, what are you doing here? So then they have to bring him around. Meanwhile, poor Elion is at her coronation ceremony, which of course is not a coronation ceremony, it's the ceremony where Phobos is going to steal all of her power and turn her into a black rose. So the girls eventually get into the throne room, and Cornelia approaches Elion, and Elion's like, Cornelia, I'm so sorry. And Cornelia's like, we don't have time for apologies now, like, come on, we need to go and fight Phobos. And the rebels have all infiltrated, there's big epic fight scenes, everyone's battling, and then the girls are fighting, and okay, to be fair, no one really knows what the deal was when they had those magic kind of lasers that came out and they all joined the circles to get, nobody fucking knows what that was. Ignore that part, just pretend that never happened. Something to do with the 4 dragons, probably, I don't know. And then Elion comes out, delivers this epic line where she's like, goodbye, Phobos, you were never my brother. It's like, oh.
This castle, hundreds of guards, your creatures, all that energy just to perpetuate an evil lie. Goodbye, Phobos. You were never my brother.
It's like, I love it. I love it. I love seeing her stand up to that shitbag. I fucking love to see it after she's been manipulated for half a season, and we finally get to see her turn around and turn the tables on Phobos and lock that bitch and all of his cronies in jail. And it's just like, yes, yes. And everyone's cheering and celebrating, and then they're out on the street and everyone's happy and Matt's there, and it's just the best. It's such a good episode because this is what I mean, is it just has that build up, you know, where you've got the start and you know the stakes are high, and then we're figuring out a plan, and then we're executing the plan, and everyone's riled up, and we're making epic speeches about how we're going to go in and we're going to fight Phobos, and then we're in the castle and we're trying to find Elion, and then we're fighting against the guards, and then Phobos comes in and we think it's all over, but then Elion comes out, and it's just brilliant. It's just perfect from start to finish. I love it so much. It's so good. Truly, like, just one of the most perfect episodes. It's just so well written. It's just a beautiful, beautiful episode. I fucking love it from start to finish. It's wonderful. It's like, even though it's a finale, I watch that episode all the time because it just is so good. It just makes me so happy. So final battle is just chef's kiss. Mwah. Now I'm beginning to think it's too low. The fact that it's 7, I'm like, I feel like it should be higher than that, because clearly I've got a real thing about this episode, but who cares? It's in the top 10. It's a perfect episode. Just trust me on that one. Number 6 on my list, again, probably a personal choice because of the character, but it's Caleb's challenge. Caleb, as we all know, is my favourite character. Him and Cornelia are my favourite characters. And I just think Caleb's challenge is a great study in Caleb, you know? It's a great study in his character. His best friend, Aldarn, who's also one of my favourite characters. I fucking love Aldarn. I think he's great. I love that the fandom, even though he's, like, not a comic character, pretty much everyone in the fandom agrees that Aldarn's great. Like, everyone kind of loves Aldarn, so I love that for him. I love that he became so popular because he deserves it. But he gets hypnotized by Elion, who doesn't even know she's doing it because she doesn't have a clue about what her powers are, and she just keeps doing things without knowing that she's doing them. You know, like when Phobos is like, oh, you just, like, stopped an earthquake in this part of the world, when actually she's, like, creating evil. You know, he's manipulating her. So she doesn't realize she's doing it, but she's completely hypnotized Aldarn and made him believe that the Guardians are evil and she and Phobos are good. So then Aldarn thinks, well, Caleb's clearly corrupted because he's working with the Guardians who are evil, so he challenges Caleb for leadership of the rebellion. Aldarn is second in command of the rebellion. He's Caleb's best friend, and Caleb is not happy about this. Now, I still don't really know why Caleb is so averse to the idea of Aldarn wanting to be leader, but clearly Caleb doesn't think that anybody but him can be leader, which is probably, I don't know if that's true or not, but it probably fits for Caleb's character, because he is, you know, pretty full of, well, not full of himself, but sure of himself. He's definitely headstrong. So he says, like, no, Aldarn, you're not taking leadership of the rebellion. He's like, well, I challenge you to a leadership battle, and Caleb's like, well, fuck, because once someone says that, it's like when back in the day when people would ask for satisfaction, you know, you challenge someone to a duel, you can't say no, you have to do the thing. You have to do the thing.
Aldarn! You got away! How?
The princess freed us.
What's all this?
The guards just gave it to us. Can you believe it? It's a new beginning for Meridian. The princess will be on the throne soon. We have no more reason to fear her brother.
Have you lost your senses? You don't see this as a trick?
We met with her. You have her and Phobos all wrong, Caleb.
Elion and Phobos are two completely different things. Her brother would never give up his power.
Phobos won't stop until he has total power over all living beings. If we fail, it won't be because of Phobos, but my former friends, the so-called Guardians. They've told our people lies that have caused you and your families so much suffering.
I see what you're doing. The princess is back. It's what we always wanted. We can't ask our people to suffer indefinitely. We're signing a peace treaty today.
You don't have the authority to do that.
The signing ceremony's at midday at the Hugong nesting grounds. All of us will be there. You have a problem with me signing it? Then you'll have to beat me in a leadership challenge.
You gotta do the 10 duel commandments. So they've got the 10 leadership challenge commandments. So they all have to go and do this, like, gauntlet where they have to, like, do all these different challenges, and whoever gets back to the thing first wins. But if they get back to the Infinite City, they turn it to egg timer, and if the second person gets back before the egg timer runs out, then you do a battle to the death, I guess, essentially. Amazingly, Aldarn actually gets back first, and I'm like, Caleb, are you sure you're really as great as you think you are? Because Aldarn beat you, bitch. But of course they get back, they have to turn the egg timer, and then they have to fight, and Caleb's like, I don't want to fight you, you're my best friend, and Aldarn's like, nah, fuck you, because he's still under a spell. And then Aldarn almost falls into like an infinite pit and dies, but Caleb manages to catch his arm, and he's like, snap out of it, and Aldarn snaps out of it, and they make up and everything's great.
Do either of you wish to concede?
You have to snap out of it now!
But for me, I just really love that episode because it's a great look at Caleb. It's a look at him as a person, his relationship with his best friend, his determination to do what he thinks is right, to continue to lead the rebellion. It's a really nice look at things and how things work on Meridian. Obviously, I love any kind of Meridian world building, so to get to see more about how the rebels operate, the fact that they have this thing about leadership challenge, and you know, the idea of what they consider to be a challenge. So, you know, having to run through like a swamp and climb up a cliff face and then battle using sticks. The fact that they've got a chamber for this, and everyone, all these people come, like there's all these spectators and they're like cheering on who they want to win, and it's like, it's funny because there is a lot of people cheering Aldarn, so it's like clearly Aldarn has like supporters. It's really interesting just to kind of see that dynamic and the way I always just wanted to see more of what the rebels get up to outside of the Guardians, like their lives on Meridian. I just want more Meridian content as it, really. I just want to see more of Meridian. I love Meridian. So I like this episode gives us more of that, more of what life is like on Meridian for the rebels and the rest of the Meridianites. The subplot is about the girls, and they fight. Oh, right, yeah, it's, there's supposed to be a peace treaty, and Elion completely believes that this peace treaty is happening. The problem is that the treaty site that was given to the rebels and the treaty site that was given to Elion are in two completely different places. Her treaty site is like in the castle. The treaty site that was given to the rebels is in the middle of a field, because it's a trick. They were getting sent into the middle of a field so they could be eaten by Larvex, and the whereas Elion thinks everyone's coming to the castle, and when they don't show up for the peace treaty, she thinks that she's been betrayed, which just pushes her further away from the Guardians and the rebels and their cause, which I think is so clever. It's just, it's the way that Phobos like so perfectly plays Elion's emotions, you know what I mean? Like, he just knows. He shows her visions of like Cornelia and Will laughing without her, you know? He drugs her parents so that they'll tell her that they're happy when they're not. Like, he really knows exactly how to get into this poor girl's mind, and it's so sad. It's so sad. Like, he's such a shitbag.
They're not coming, are they?
It's as I feared. They're simply not to be trusted.
They didn't want peace at all, only to steal your grain.
Let's return to the castle before they can attack us here in the open.
And this is just another one of those examples where he's tricked her into thinking that she's been betrayed, when in fact the rebels were going to go to the peace treaty. You know, they entirely had planned to do this peace treaty, but of course the treaty site that they'd been sent to was a trap, and they were going to get eaten by Larvex. I also really like that because I like getting to see the different Meridian creatures, and Larvex are an interesting one, so it's nice getting to see the girls having to like fight the Larvex and try to figure out how to escape. I like all the different Meridian creatures and the different kind of like the flora and fauna of Meridian. I think that's it. I think part of the reason I love Caleb's challenge so much is because it's about Caleb, and the other part of it is just because it's so Meridian heavy and we get to like see a lot of Meridian in that episode, and we get to see some interesting scenes with Elion, and you know, there's that really nice bit where Aldern's like, you know, he realizes that they've been tricked and Elion lied to him, but then Caleb's like, you know, she probably didn't even know she was doing it, because at the end of the day they're still very much on Elion's side, and they know that she's been manipulated by Phobos and that she wouldn't be... Look, there's a big bit of my hair sticking out of the side here. She would never do that intentionally. She would never intentionally hurt MD, and she would never send them into a trap like that. She wouldn't do that because she's not like that, but Phobos is. So I just think it's a really great episode. It's just one that I really enjoy. It's definitely a favourite of mine. We're into the top 5 now, the final 5. The final countdown. Okay, so number 5 on my list is Parents' Night. Parents' Night is definitely one of the best episodes in the entire series. I don't think anybody would argue with that. It's definitely one of the highest rated. It's one of the most popular because it is so good. Parents' Night is primarily all about Elion, and it's a great episode for her. It's the episode where she finds out who she really is. She finds out that she is actually a princess on Meridian. She's got a brother. She's, you know, from another world. She's not even from Earth. Her parents are actually, you know, creatures rather than humans, and her entire life for the past 13 years has been a lie, which is a huge thing for anyone to find out. Definitely a huge thing for a 13-year-old girl. And she reacts pretty much as you would expect, by having pretty much an entire mental breakdown, and I do not blame her at all. The episode as well, I think they did a really good job of like creating the I don't know, is it the word context, the surroundings, like how they did that episode, where they placed that story. Because I think obviously her finding that out is going to be a huge deal for her, but I think they made it like extra emotional because they set it in the context of it being the school parents' evening. Because it's all about family, you know, it's about people and their parents, and we get to see the girls with their parents. They're bringing the parents to school, and they're going to get, you know, Haylen's all excited because she can show her parents her locker, and Will's trying to figure out how she can hide all of her bad work from her mom, and Cornelia's complaining because her mother's going to spend all evening putting her hair behind her ear and going, why do you want to hide that pretty face? And Martin just crashes Irma's meeting with her parents and tells them that they're a couple, and Irma's like, no, but okay. Like, no, we're not, but thanks for that anyway. So the girls are all, you know, going on about their relationship with their parents, which is making Elion realise, you know, she's reflecting on her own relationship with her parents, which has always been a bit odd. Like, she loves her parents and they're close, but she feels like there's always been something wrong there. And for Parents' Night, they've been asked to do this project where they're going to make a family tree and they're going to put them all up in the assembly hall, you know, just as a kind of fun project for a parents' evening. And Elion rocks up with her parents, her family tree, which is literally just her and Eleanor and Thomas.
I think our family chart looks very nice.
Absolutely. Less is more.
Yeah, it's not crowded up with a bunch of family members.
And that's her whole family tree. And apparently, you know, they tell her it's because her great aunt like lost a bunch of records in a fire, and she's like, what? And they lost every single family photo, every record, everything. They've lost their ability to use the phone.
Dad, Mr. Hoffman has taught me so much about family histories and how important it is to know your roots. He especially wanted to see my family tree chart.
We did the best we could, honey.
There's no photos here except ours. Where are the pictures of Roger and Claudia and Great Aunt Millicent? And how come none of these people have ever visited us?
It's a small family. Your mother and I were both only children.
There was a fire, I think, 50 years ago. Your great Aunt Sylvia, she lost a lot of documents.
And her car and her phone? You know what? Never mind. I get it. I'm just not worth the bother.
You know, they lost their house, their address. Why have we never met any of our family members? And of course, Eleanor and Thomas, Alborn and Meriador, are really struggling to figure out how to explain any of this to Elion, because they've been trying to cover this up for years, but obviously Elion's at an age now where she's going to start questioning it. Maybe when she was a child, she accepted that there was reasons that they couldn't visit her family, but now she's 13 years old, she knows that this is ridiculous, you know, she knows that there's no reason that her family wouldn't be able to contact them, and she wants to know the truth. She wants to know why she doesn't have a family when everyone else does. And I think that makes it even more emotional because she's already feeling disconnected from her family when Cedric, who has been her, you know, confidant for the past few months, comes to her and says, actually, you do have a family, you have a brother. Fair enough, you don't have any parents, but you have a brother. You've got a whole world that looks to you. You know, you're going to be the queen and everyone loves you there. You know, if you come back to Meridian with us, you're going to have a real family. You're going to have people who really love you, unlike your parents who lied to you for your entire life, and your friends who found out the truth like a month or so ago and have been keeping it from you ever since. And it just alienates her even more from the people who have actually been protecting her. You know, she doesn't realize that the girls and her parents have been doing everything they can to keep her safe these past few months, and all she can see is that they've been lying to her. So she believes Cedric, the person who has been, you know, grooming her essentially to take her away from her family, where she's going to get used by a man and turned into a black rose and have all her power drained.
It isn't true. It's just not. It can't be.
Don't you see how this explains everything? You were born in Meridian, a wonderful kingdom far from here.
No, it's not possible.
I would never lie to you. What's more, I cannot lie to Meridian's rightful princess.
What? This morning I was a teenager with no friends. Now I'm a princess?
In Meridian, you'll have real friends, family, a history. You have a brother who misses you very much. It's time you went home.
Don't believe anything he says.
Oh, and your so-called friends have known about this all along.
What?
They've kept you from knowing who you really are. Ask them.
When were you gonna tell me?
I wanted to. Elion, no matter what he's told you, Cedric is not your friend.
More of a friend than you.
But all she can see is that everyone that she's ever cared about has been lying to her for way too long. And it's a really emotional episode to watch, to realize, you know, if you put yourself in Elion's shoes, how hurt she must have been, and how confused, and what a huge upheaval for her life that must have been, and how detrimental to her mental health that must have been. So it's a really sad episode. It's really difficult to watch. And to see her joy when she goes to Meridian and she hugs Phobos and she thinks that she's found where she belongs. She thinks that she's finally figured out, you know, she never really felt entirely like she belonged on Earth and with her family. And she thinks now she's found her true home and her true family and everything's going to be great and it's going to be roses and rainbows. And it's not. You know it's not going to be. Because you know that straight out the door he's lying to her about literally everything. And that he only has nefarious intentions with her. And it's really sad. In terms of like actual like what the girls are doing in the episode, I love getting to see them meet all, like getting to see them with their parents, and there's some really nice bits in there, just getting to see their relationship with their families. There's a great scene where Caleb and Cedric are fighting in the street and Cedric's trying to stay in human form so that he doesn't, you know, reveal to Elion that he's actually a giant snake monster. And then they all get locked inside a terrarium and they have to fight like a giant spider, and Tirani has to come in with the science to figure out how to escape, and they're miniature and they have to try and get back to full size. It's just a really good episode. It's a really good episode. It's really dark. It's definitely one of the darkest in the series. And it does the perfect, I think, it does the perfect job of getting Elion to that place. It does, like, tells the perfect story for Elion in terms of her leaving Earth behind and going to Meridian, and I think they played that so well throughout the entire season. And it's one of the things that I always criticize about the comic, was the fact that all we get to see of Elion really is she goes to the Halloween party, she talks to a guy that she thinks is hot, who is way too old to be at this party in the first place, and then the next thing she's lure the girls to the gym where it gets set on fire and she's staring at them from behind a tree, and then from then on she's evil. And we have no idea what Cedric said to her that convinced her that. Like, we have no idea what Cedric said that somehow made her go from being completely normal Earth girl with her best friends to trying to get her best friends murdered. Whereas in the show, we can actually see the path of how that happened. We can see how Elion started to become separated from her friends because they're always out fighting evil and they don't invite her. And, you know, they tell her that they're doing something else, but she's not invited, which obviously upsets her. How that drove her closer to Cedric because he was the only person, it seemed, to listen to her. How we see that she's obviously had this long-standing problem with the fact that she doesn't have a family, really, outside of her parents, and she doesn't understand why. And you can see her just getting gradually more and more upset with her life in Heatherfield, which means that when she does find out the truth and she realises that she's been lied to, she realises why, you know, things have been going the way they've been going the past few months, and she discovers that for whatever reason, you know, she had a life where she was a princess and someone took her and brought her to Earth and made her go to school. Like, I would probably be pissed off too if I found out I was a princess and someone forced me to go to high school. Like, that, I would be unimpressed with that as well. So you can see that path, you can see her mental state and what brought her to that moment. And I think they do that so well, and it culminates in Parents' Night where she finally realizes what's going on and she makes that decision to go to Meridian. You know, Cedric's like, you know, has to be your decision, which I don't think he meant in the slightest, but I think, you know, he's trying to make it seem as if he's on her side. And she's like, yeah, I want to go to Meridian, because her life here on Earth has been such a shit show recently that you can't really blame her. And that's what I love, is that they did such a good job in the show of actually telling, you know, showing us what brought Elion to that decision, as opposed to the comic where we literally never find out what made her just up and leave Earth and try and kill her friend. So yeah, I think Parents' Night does a much better job of getting that through to us, and it makes it one of the best episodes in the series. Coming in at number 4, and again, this is a personal choice. I just know people are going to be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Because I've got episodes like The Final Battle and Parents' Night and stuff in here, which I'm sure most people would put right at the top of their list. But this is my list. This is my ranking, so back off. For me, number 4 is The Underwater Mines. The Underwater Mines has always been one of my favourites. It's always been an episode that I just love. Again, it's probably the Meridian thing. I'm realising that actually, if you look at the next 3 on my list, this number 3, number 2 on my list are all actually kind of in that vein of having quite a lot of Meridian world building, and I think that's probably why they are my favourites, because I really love Meridian, and I think that's probably why they fall into that category. The Underwater Mines also is quite Caleb-centric, which explains a lot. It's the episode where we find out that Caleb's father is alive. Now, in fairness, we've never been told that Caleb's father isn't alive, but I guess we're just supposed to assume that that was something that was weighing on his mind. I think that episode would have had more weight if at some point before that we'd actually had something that told us that Caleb's dad was dead and he was upset about it, but we never do, so we're just kind of, in the Underwater Mines, it's like, my father's alive? And I'm like, was he not before? But taking it that we're supposed to just like assume that that's obviously been something that's weighing on his mind, that's like a huge deal for him, obviously. And we get to find out, you know, his dad died in the Battle of Grey Woods, which I'm like, there's lore there that once again, there's lore that you're not giving me. You're telling me, but you're not showing me, and you're not actually telling me anything. What is Grey Woods? Where is that? What was the battle? Tell me. Tell me things. Tell me what the fuck is going on this planet. Stop giving me hints. Be straight with me. Tell me stuff. Anyway. And we find out that he didn't actually die in the Battle of Grey Woods, but he went and has been hiding out in the underwater mines. The underwater mines are mines that are underwater. Phobos owns them, and he puts people to work basically as slaves in the mines. What they're mining, I don't really know, but they're mining. And Akiton gets captured by Phobos. Akiton, for whatever reason, was making a crown for Elion, and I suppose he thought that if he did that then Phobos would be lenient with him. Instead, Phobos chucks him in the underwater mines because Phobos isn't dick, and you know, He just, you know, you don't make a bargain with Phobos. He just doesn't do it. So, and he goes and he meets Julian. Julian being Caleb's father. And Akiton manages to get word back to Aldarn, who manages to get word to Caleb to tell him that Julian is in the underwater mines. So obviously Caleb's immediately like, we need to go to the underwater mines and save my dad. Which they do. So I love that because I love to get to see the emotion. I love to get to see, we get to see more, we find out in the very first episode that Aldarn's father is a blacksmith because Caleb says Aldarn's father made this bow in the very first episode. And here we actually see it. We get to see the blacksmith shop. We get to see Aldarn, you know, meet up with Akiton, and we get to see their relationship, which is nice. And we get to see that Akiton and Julian were obviously friends, and we're just getting that wider context of the rebellion and the Meridianites and the way that their society works and the connections that they have with each other, and I really like that. So then they all go to the underwater mines, and that is a lot of fun. It's there's the whole scene where Caleb and the girls get stuck in like a mine cart and go rallying down the mine cart track, because you gotta have it. If you're doing something in a mine, you gotta have an out of control mine cart. You gotta have a caboose on the loose. And we get to see the relationship between Caleb and Julian for the first time, and I love their bond. I love their relationship. It's great. I really do love it. We get to see kind of the way that the guards are not entirely loyal to Phobos, how they are definitely more concerned about their own lives, where there's the bit where, you know, Halen says, you know, the guards are people too, weird creature people, but people. So the Guardians invite them in, but they're like, you know, Caleb's like, put all your weapons outside, but we will protect you. So, you know, it's nice to see that way that, like, we can see that Caleb and the Guardians will protect the guards if they choose to, like, put down their weapons and come with them. And we get to see that where, like, in season 2, a lot of Phobos' guards have switched to the Guardian side because they don't actually have loyalty to Phobos. That's not what it's about. I think a lot of the time it's more that they fear Phobos and they don't want to get, you know, they don't want to get killed by Phobos for disobedience, whereas but when they realize that the Guardians will protect them. There's also that thing where, you know, they have this idea that the Guardians, you know, Phobos is the good guy and the Guardians the bad guy, but when they say that the Guardians are merciful and kind, and, you know, that's what happens in the Rebel Rescue when they meet Tynar, is Tynar realizes that the Guardians are good people, that they are kind people, that they help, that they only want to protect people and make the world a better place. And the guards, a lot of them realize that that's what they would rather do. They would rather be, you know, loyal to people who are kind and good than people who lead through fear and violence and are evil and draining everyone's life force. So I like to see that. There's a really cool battle at the end with Cedric, and all the miners escape, and there's this lovely moment when they're standing on the beach and Caleb says, "Welcome back to the rebellion, Dad." And it's just like, I just love that episode. I think it's a really good episode. It's got some really great, like, Meridian world building in there. It's got some really nice character moments for Caleb, some lovely, you know, moments between him and Julian that show that bond that they have. It's got some Aldar in there. We get to see Akiton. I just really enjoy it. It's just an episode that I really like. That's all I can say, really. Into the top 3 now. And again, you're probably going to be very confused at my number 3, because I remember having a conversation with someone on Tumblr about this before who said that this episode was one that they really didn't like, and I was baffled because I'm like, that's one of my favourite episodes, and they were like, I don't get why it would be your favourite episode, and I'm like, it just is. I think it's a fantastic episode, but, you know, you do you, boo. So number 3 on my list is the 3rd episode of season 1, The Key. The Key is, I think a lot of people don't even remember The Key. I'm going to be completely honest. Like, I feel like it's not an episode anyone ever talks about. It's probably an episode that people forget is even there. But for me, that's one of my favourite episodes, and I think it's one of the best episodes. Which is wild to say when I know that so many people think of it as being a non-event. But for me, that is one of my favourite episodes. And it's because of the Meridian world building, the character moments, the way that we get to see how the girls are operating now in their kind of first kind of proper day out as guardians as a team. the relationship that they're building with Caleb's kind of inability to work with them, and his kind of, what's going on with my hair? His real issue that he has with Earth and Earth customs, and all of that combined just makes this one of my favourite episodes. So in this episode we have a few different things going on. One is that Caleb has now moved to Earth. Obviously he was brought to Earth at the end of the last episode, and he's staying there to keep out of harm's way, basically out of Cedric and Phobos's line of vision. And he is, Halen is trying to get him into like Earth life. He's trying to, like, you know, amalgamate him into Earth society. She's doing that by creating outfits for him that he just absolutely hates, you know.
Oh, don't be such a grumpy puss. You look really cool.
I've lived in tents smaller than this. Why am I wearing enough clothes for a 400-pound clown?
You're styling. Remember, you have to blend in here.
I'm not supposed to be blending in here. I'm supposed to be battling Phobos and Meridian. And finding the rightful heir to the throne, who is somewhere in your ridiculously dressed world.
Ooh, Caleb, you are one major chunk.
It's hunk, Grandma. But wait till you see him in his goth outfit.
I can't command a rebellion dressed like a parachute. Ow!
Ooh, sorry. Was that your knee?
Caleb's just like, I don't understand any of this. And then he, you know, people skateboard past him and he doesn't understand what a skateboard is, and he's just so confused. And I love that. I love those moments in season 1 where we see Caleb like trying to understand Earth society and just not getting it, when he doesn't know what a phone is, he doesn't know what an ice cream is. Like, I love all of those moments. I think they're so funny, and I think I just really enjoy those like fish out of water scenes, and The Key has a lot of that in it, and that I find really funny. But then Caleb goes back to Meridian. He meets up with Aldarn, and I love that whole scene with the two of them, and he's like, Aldarn's like, they say you crossed the veil, what's it like there? Because Aldarn is so intrigued by Earth. Like, that's one of his main kind of characteristics, is that he is a true Earth worshipper. Like, he just wants to be on Earth. He loves, you know, he discovers chocolate and he discovers binoculars, and he just thinks Earth society is the coolest thing, whereas Caleb can't be arsed with it in the slightest. So Aldarn's like, what's it like? And he's like, the teenagers do 360 fakey ollies, you know, and they say like in the middle of sentences for no reason. And Aldarn just looks at him and he's like, it sounds good.
Aldarn, you gave me a heck of a scare.
Yeah, sorry, Caleb. They're out looking for you everywhere. We'd heard you'd gone through the veil. What's it like there?
The teenagers stand on little boards with wheels and do 360 fakey ollies. Oh yeah, and they say like in the middle of sentences for no reason.
It sounds good.
And that always breaks my heart, because it's like Caleb has been there like a week or something and already thinks that this is like the stupidest thing ever. But to Aldarn, all he sees is a world where people are free. You know, you can't do a 360 fakey ollie down the street in Meridian. You know, you don't have the freedom to live normally, but on Earth they don't have, I mean, I know that's a big thing to say. It's not as if on Earth we don't have things like war and stuff like that, but in the context of this, I always like to try and make that a point, because it's like, I'm not trying to say that Earth is a paradise, because it fucking isn't. Like, you know, the sea is on fire these days. Literally, the sea caught fire, and everything's on fire, and there's war, and it's hideous. But, in the greater context of this particular thing, to Aldarn, Heatherfield is a paradise and Meridian is a nightmare. So even though Caleb thinks this place is so dumb and so stupid and so beneath him, to Aldarn it sounds like a beautiful place, and I think that is so sweet. We also get to see the girls interact with Blanc, because Blanc at this point is still not quite their friend. He's sort of this pest that's just hanging about. But he finds out that Caleb has gone back to Meridian. The girls are like, what is Caleb doing going back to Meridian? We told him to lay low, blah, blah, blah. So they have to follow him. So they go to Meridian, but they still don't have a damn clue of what they're doing. But we get to see them like in the Meridian marketplace. They like help someone they want to get like cloaks, but the guy needs something to trade, and they're like, what if we dry out all your firewood? So they get to use the fire power and it dries the firewood, and I love that, again, getting to see that Meridian society and the way that things work there. And then they bump into Caleb and Aldarn, and Aldorn tries to hit on Cornelia by asking her to do a 360 fakie ollie with him, and she's just like, what? And Caleb's like, I don't need you, because he's still at this point. He's like, I don't need you girls to help me. Like, I don't need your help. I'm the rebel leader. I can do it myself. And they're like, no, you can't. You need us. And I love all of that. And then they have to go into the palace because, you know, Phobos has found out about someone giving the key to Caleb in the oubliette. And obviously it was Vathek, and they don't want Vathek to get caught. So then they have to go and try and frame someone else. And they frame Raithor. Raithor gets thrown into the Abyss of Shadows, which is like such a cool idea. It's an endless pit where you fall forever, which is horrifying. Horrifying. And yeah, okay, you can get out of it, as we discovered, but you're not supposed to be able to get out of it. It's literally a bottomless pit where you just fall. And like, apparently you never hit the ground. You'll just fall eternally until you die of starvation, I guess. Hideous. Sounds hideous. And again, it just shows the way that Meridian works, the torture techniques that they have here, the fact that they think this is a perfectly acceptable thing to have. You know, Phobos is like, this is cool, let's make a bottomless pit and throw people down it. Like, horrifying. And we get to see more of like the castle and the guards, and the girls are still trying to learn how to use their powers, and it's, for me, I just think it's an absolutely brilliant episode. I think it's got so much going for it, and it in terms of like world building, character building, establishing these connections, establishing this, you know, because the first 2 episodes is really about setting the scene, and this, so like now the scene is set, now we're establishing, we're building on that, and we're looking, you know, at what happens next. So we're looking at, you know, how the characters, now that the characters have all met and are all connected, now what do we do with those connections, and what are their relationships, and how are they going to work together in the future, and what are they going to do with all this? And that's what I love about The Key. That is why it's one of my favourite episodes. And I know for a lot of people it's just an episode that does nothing, but for me it's an episode that does so much. To me, I think it does loads, and I think it's a really important episode, and the series would be so lost without it. So for me, one of my favourite episodes. And I know there's going to be people who disagree with me, but that's my opinion, and after all this is just me giving out opinions. Into the final 2 now, and if you've been keeping track, which I don't imagine you have been, but if you have, you'll know what 2 episodes are left, so let's see which one gets which spot, shall we? So number 2 on my list is The Labyrinth. The Labyrinth is an episode I've always really, really loved. And like I say with the past 2, I think it's partly because of the Meridian-ness of it, the fact that we get to see a bit more of Meridian society. The other part of it is that there's just a lot of it that makes me laugh. I think it's quite a dark episode at parts, but it's also quite funny. The episode starts out with Caleb when he's working at the Silver Dragon. So Caleb has taken a part-time job at the Silver Dragon to earn money so that he can, you know, buy stuff for himself, since he's now living on Earth. But he's really bad at this job. He's insulting the customers. You know, this guy says, my wife asked for a drink with no ice, and he's like, well, tell her to wait until it melts. You know, he just thinks it's so stupid. He thinks all these people are just idiots, and he can't understand how people live like this.
Oh, I don't know. What do you recommend?
That you hurry up. I've got other customers.
Waiter, my wife asked for water with no ice?
Then tell her to wait until it melts. You people wouldn't last a day in Meridian.
What's Meridian?
I think it's one of those fancy places downtown.
What's the Szechuan chicken like?
It's like this, but there's more of it.
He tries to use a photocopier, he doesn't have a clue what he's doing. But Ray's like, this steak has been dropped on the floor, how could you possibly know that? And he holds it up and there's a footprint in the steak. Like, I just think all of that's hilarious. That always has me in bits. It's some of my favourite scenes in the whole series. It's like, Caleb, get them at the programme, what is wrong with you? But then it takes a darker turn, because the girls go, it's based on the issue Illusions and Lies, which is where the girls end up trapped in the bookstore, and the bookstore ends up huge, and they have to like fight Vathek and stuff inside the bookstore. So the girls go to the bookstore. It's also when we meet Rick Hoffman, which of course is Cedric pretending to be a bookstore owner, and the girls are looking for books, and when they get into the back of the bookstore, suddenly, like, they see a book and they touch it, and then they, like, whirlwind into what looks like the bookstore but isn't, because now it's a giant labyrinth and they're in Meridian. And of course this is also the start of the downfall of their friendship with Elion, because now Elion went into the bookstore with all her friends and all her friends have disappeared on her, and she's like, did they leave? And Cedric's like, oh yeah, they left. And she's like, but they left without me. And it's like, this is the start of things going very wrong for Elion and her friendship, and obviously her becoming closer to Cedric, which, as we were just talking about, is the whole downfall of that. So the girls end up stuck in a labyrinth, and they have to use Cornelia's expensive jumper as a thread. So all those years on a swagger hanger, and they have to pull her jumper apart and use it as a thread to try and find their way around the labyrinth. Meanwhile, Blunk has showed up to tell Will that, you know, the girls were there one minute and gone the next, and Caleb and Will go to the bookstore and they manage to find their way in, and it's really nice because I like seeing Will and Caleb team up. I've said this before, that I like their friendship, and I like the episodes where they work as a little team. So the Labyrinth is one of those where they're working as a little team. And they're trying to find the girls, and the girls have ended up in the castle because the bookstore connects to the library and the Meridian Palace. And Trill of all people, which of course, if you know what happens with Trill in season 2, it's wild to watch this episode back and see that she's the one that's helping them, because of course Trill is actually Nerissa and she's evil, but Trill helps them out and gets the girls out of the palace, and they all sit around a campfire, and Helen's like, why is no one eating? And Cornelia's like, I think this is all they have. Because it's that way of seeing that the people in Meridian are so poor, and even though they are positive and they have music and, you know, they're trying to remain positive about their situation, the reality is that they've really not got anything going for them. You know, their life force is being constantly drained. And it's the episode where we really get to see for the first time, like, how dire the situation is in Meridian and what the girls are truly fighting for.
This is wonderful food. I'm afraid we can't eat it all.
Once you told us you were the Guardians, everybody brought something. Why did you come all the way here from Earth in human form?
Well, believe it or not, we were looking for a history book.
Let me refill your drinks.
Why isn't anyone else eating?
Helen, I think this may be all the food they have.
Kinda puts a lost essay into perspective.
When Phobos took the throne, a light went out over this land. Our men are jailed, our crops are stolen, we have no security, nothing for ourselves but our dreams. I hear things working in the castle. They say Phobos has a sister on the other side. Could this be true?
What? A sister?
The true heir to the throne. They say she doesn't know her identity, or even that she was not born on Earth.
You still think it's one of us?
If only you could find her first. For years we've suffered under Phobos, forced to work for a pittance in his castle, his stables, his mines. We always have hope, but sometimes I fear we hope in vain.
We'll find the true heir and bring her back here. We promise you.
I don't get it, though. Why would Phobos look for someone who might replace him?
And I think that's a big moment for them, is that up until this point, they've just known that they, you know, are having to help the rebellion fight against Phobos, but I don't think they've really seen the scale of what they were fighting for until the Labyrinth, where they really realise what is going on in Meridian and how bad the situation is, and how they have the ability to turn the tide and make things better for these people and to free them from this oppression. And I think that really puts them on the right course for the rest of the series, where they know now what they are fighting for and why they've been given this responsibility, and they take it a lot more seriously from that moment on. And, you know, they say that to Caleb, where they're like, you know, we met these people and they gave us food even though they didn't have any food to give out, you know?
We met some villagers. They got us out of the castle.
I can't stop thinking about how horrible their lives are under Phobos. They gave us their own food.
They're good people. Don't worry. In the days ahead, you'll have plenty of chances to repay them.
When all you've got is nothing, there's a lot to go around. Sorry. And Caleb's like, you'll have the chance to thank them in time. So I think that's really nice. It's also the first instance of the tracker before he returns. In the Return of the Tracker, we see him in the labyrinth, and they have to like climb a tree because the girls don't have any powers. Like when the girls end up in Meridian without Will, they don't have any powers, so they're trying to like climb up a tree to like escape the tracker. For me, I think it's just a great episode. I think it really builds that understanding of Meridian and what it is and what we're all fighting for here, and I really like that. It's got those really funny moments with Caleb. It's got some nice character moments with Caleb and Will. It's got some really nice moments with the girls when they're trying to work together without their powers. It's, you know, showing the start of Elion's story before we even know anything about her being Phobos' sister. It's really giving us the start of that storyline and showing us the way that she's getting cut off from all of her friends. So for me, it's one of the best episodes. It's one of my absolute favourites, and I really love it, and that's why it's number 2. And now for number 1 on my list, and I know already this is controversial because I know someone who hates this episode, so awkward. But it's my favourite. It's been my favourite for years now. It will probably always be my favourite from now on. I don't think it will ever get beaten by anything. And it's O is for Obedience. O is for Obedience obviously is controversial because it introduced a plot that not everybody is particularly happy with. Personally, the only issue I have with this plot is that I just wish that they got to do more with it, and I'm not sure why they didn't. I always would like to think that maybe it would have got brought up again in season 3, but I just feel like it was a really clever idea that they didn't do very much with, and obviously that is the introduction of the story that Nerissa is actually Caleb's long-lost mother. And I know that people are kind of sick of the whole "look, I am your father" plot, but I'm still always up for someone having a secret family member. I really like it. I think it's really clever. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially when you look at Caleb and he's got Nerissa's eyes. And him and Nerissa have these same eyes. You know, you've got your mother's eyes, is very much the case with Caleb and Nerissa. And I love what that brings to Nerissa as a character, because I think she always seemed more human than a lot of villains, and that she clearly had emotions. She cared about Cassidy, she cared about her friends, but she's just so far gone in terms of her corruption and her desire for power that she's really lost all sense of humanity. But seeing her with Caleb and seeing how she dealt with that situation, and then later on in the series as well, when you see her reacting to, like, you know, when she says, like, Caleb is my son and will not allow Phobos to harm him, you see that humanity come out in her, and you see that love and affection that she has, and you see that she is a whole person. You know, she's not just a soulless villain. She actually still is a real person with real feelings and emotions, and she does care. And what she really wants more than anything is to have Caleb and Julian by her side, because she still loves them, and that's what she wants. The problem is that she'll never accept that she could stop being evil and be with them, but she just wants them to be evil and be with her. So, you know, she never kind of gets that she could compromise the other way. But I love what that does for her as a character. I love the humanity and the depth that it brings to her as a person and as a villain. I really love that. And Nerissa's one of my favourite characters. I think she's an absolutely fantastic villain. And a lot of it is the fact that she's a layered villain, a villain with depth, and a villain with a degree of humanity in her, that she's not just a soulless person whose goal is you know, just power and nothing else, that there is layers to her. And you notice, you know, that to get power she reunited her old friends, and you have to think, you know, did she do that just because she wanted the power, or did she want her friends back? But she knew that she'd burned those bridges, so the only way to get them back was to put them all under a spell. I think what Nerissa really wants more than anything is to be loved. The problem is that she wants to be loved by everyone. She wants to be loved by her friends, she wants to be loved by her son, she wants to be loved by Julian, but no one does love her because she's evil and she murdered Cassidy. So she's decided that she just wants to put the entire universe under her spell, and then they'll all worship her, and she'll finally feel that love that she hasn't felt for possibly ever. probably other than Julian, she's never felt that love. Maybe she felt it with Cassidy before she murdered her, I don't know. The point is, I think Nerissa is someone who's incredibly devoid of love and just really needs that affection. And I think she hoped that if she could get Caleb onto her side, then she would have the love of her own son, and that would be huge for her. And she doesn't get that because there's no way Caleb's going to go over to Nerissa's side, so that just doesn't work. Doesn't even remotely work. So there's that. I think one of the things that makes this episode one of my favourites is because there's so much Nerissa, and we get to really understand Nerissa more as a character. And this idea that she claims that the reason that she gave birth to Caleb was so that someone would overthrow Phobos for her, like that's a gambit, and that's a lengthy gambit. You know, she's been hiding out as the mage, as Trill, for all these years because she was apparently just waiting for the day that Caleb would overthrow Phobos and she could step forwards and try and take over the world. And that is admirable, personally. Like, I do not have the patience to wait like 16 years for a gambit to pay off, but Nerissa did. Unfortunately, it didn't work for her, but you know.
You must have questions. Just one, Mom. How do you live with yourself?
By making the universe a better place.
No. Seriously.
Oh, I'm quite serious. When Meridian was under Phobos' thumb, someone had to take charge to unite the Meridianites and save their world.
That was me, not you.
And you were created by me entirely for that purpose. Someone had to have a vision, Caleb. On Meridian, that was you. But I play on a larger stage. Only I have the vision to create a perfect universe. All worlds will be united under my rule. No more war or conflict. No injustice or suffering. If I demand obedience, it is only for the greater good. To create a new order.
She had that patience, and man, what a trooper for that. Like, what a girl. You know, she was hanging about working in Phobos' palace and like the kitchen all this time, you know what I mean? Like, she was doing a lot of stuff that probably she didn't really get any enjoyment out of, just to maintain this control over the situation that she was in. What a girl. I fucking love Nerissa. We get some really nice, a really nice look at Caleb as well in this episode, I think, which is another reason why it's my favourite, is because we get to see Caleb, we get to really break down his psyche and look at who he is. And even though he's never had a mother, he has no interest in building a bond with Nerissa here, and it clearly hurts him that this is... It really, really messes with him that Nerissa is his mother, but he, you know, doesn't want that relationship with Nerissa. That's not what he wants. He just is hurt by the fact that he finds out that is, you know, for someone like him whose mission in life is to be good and to protect and to defend the planet and everything, to find out that his mother is the one who's been trying to blow it up is definitely not what he wanted to hear. And we get a really good look at that, and he comes out with my favourite line like ever in the series, which is when he says, this isn't about blood, this is about good versus evil, guess which side I'm on.
You didn't listen to a word I said. You mean the ranting about how you're a force for cosmic order?
My blood flows through your veins. You belong to me.
This isn't about blood. This is about good versus evil. Guess which side I'm on.
Then I will destroy you!
And I think I wrote a big speech once on Tumblr about this. It's just this idea of teaching children that just because you're blood related to someone doesn't mean you have to love them or even like them or have anything to do with them. And that's sort of what we learn in this episode from Caleb is, yeah, okay, his mother might be Nerissa, but that doesn't mean he has to have any connection with her, and it doesn't mean he has to do what she says. Because it's not about blood, it's about who you are, it's about conscience, and it's about doing the right thing. And if someone in your life is a toxic influence, just because you're blood related to them doesn't mean you have to keep that person around or have any kind of bond with them at all. And I think for me growing up, because I had someone in my life who was kind of like that, where it was like, we're related by blood, but I wouldn't choose to have you in my life. I think that really spoke to me because I think I really needed someone to say that, you know, to say just because you're blood related to someone doesn't mean you have to have that bond with them. If they're a bad person and they are bringing badness into your life, you can cut that person off. And I think that was a really great lesson that I learned from Caleb in that episode. Also in that episode, of course, the other plot is about Irma setting up the VMJ concert, which I also love because I went on and did a degree in radio, so getting to watch them trying to set up a radio station and, you know, freaking out because they realise that one of the cables isn't connected, and he's going around being like, I'm Captain Radio Geek, and that speaks to me more now than it did back then, because now I actually know what they're talking about. I love to see the connection between the girls, and Irma's getting so, you know, Irma's being Irma and she's pissing off all her friends, and Cornelia's still obsessed with Vance Michael Justin, and then there's some great scenes with Martin that I love because it really follows up with what happened in Ella's for Loser. And
I'm on it, my Tyrannista.
That's okay, Martin. I'll do it myself. You just, kick back.
All right, that's it!
What's it? I've been nice to you all day.
You don't think I know the taste of pity? Oh, baby, I know pity.
It's not pity. It's more like, guilt.
Guilt? Over what?
We've had a rough time lately. Plus, Vance. I mean, I want things to be perfect for him, because he's like the perfect guy for me. But I also know how you feel about me, and I didn't want to rub your face in it, or ever make you feel like, you know, a loser again.
Irma, derma, epiderma. I can't compete with a pop star god like VMJ.
You know, he hates being called that.
I know. But you and me, we have our thing. A delicate balance of annoyance and rejection. No room for pity in there. Or guilt.
Well, if it ain't broke. Martin, darn it, get a move on. Up to the booth. Final checks. Now!
I'm on it, Passion Flower.
And it's just so nice to see them reform that bond where Martin's like, yeah, you did really hurt my feelings, but it's okay because, you know, I'm over it. And what we have is stronger than that. Our friendship is stronger than one mistake. You know, it's fine, it's in the past, and we're gonna go forward. And I love that because I love the friendship that they have, and I love Martin as a character. So I love to get to see all that in this episode and see that follow up from what happened in Ella's for Loser, and see them move on from that incident and, you know, be able to reform their friendship. Obviously, Irma then pisses off all of her friends, who then ditch her because she, you know, took all, you know, she's, well, first she's being really ruthless and Nerissa-like and ordering them around, but then when they come back in and help her out with everything, she, you know, doesn't give them any credit, and they're all really annoyed. And there's that great scene where they go outside and she's like, I can't believe I had to leave my concert early. Cornelia turns around and is like, okay, Miss Ego Trip Credit Hog Slave Driver, I have a boyfriend in crisis here. And then Will's like, and not to mention a universe in peril. And then Irma's like, I'm just saying it's lousy timing. Shut up, Irma. Fucking hell. So then they all have to go to Mount Thanos, and there's some really nice fight scenes there. Cornelia's on top form, being like absolute best supportive girlfriend. We love to see it. Violently protective girlfriend. Makes my day. Really does. And then the girls are like, ooh, careful, Will, it's her way or the highway. And Irma's like, what exactly is your point? You can tell I've seen this episode a bazillion times because I can quote like the entire thing start to finish. And then on top of all of that, we've also got VMJ out singing his wee songs. Now, no offense to Alexander Polinsky, I don't think he's got the best singing voice in the world. But they are fun little songs. I particularly love, you know, the song that plays when Caleb's like walking away dramatically in the snow, and it's like, if you could just wait, I know I'd make you see we have forever now, forever's vow.
If you could just wait, I know I'd make you see we have forever now, forever's vow. I know it's meant to be.
Where have you been? This is his final encore!
Oh, man.
I wanna say goodbye to love. I wanna say goodbye tonight. Oh, baby, can't you see?
I love that. I love that scene at the end as well when he comes out and Cornelia's like, I'll go with you, and then Julian's like, he just needs time, and he walks off into the snow, and it's just so dramatic. I don't fucking know where he's walking to because he's on top of a mountain, but I just imagine he like walked off and then stopped and then was like, fuck. And I don't know where I'm going, and then had to come back. But I love all that. And then at the end, you know, Irma's like, these are all my friends, they deserve credit. And then VMJ, it turns out that, you know, this joke that's been going on since the return of the tracker, that he hates being called VMJ, actually turned out to not be the case, and he does like being called VMJ, and he's like, you know, Lieutenant Radio Geek. Oh, he's Captain Radio Geek and Martin's Lieutenant Radio Geek, and he's like, let's talk soundboards. And we find out that VMJ is actually just a huge dork, and that's just such a great moment. So for me, it's just like a perfect episode from start to finish. I just absolutely love it. I really do. But what really makes it for me is definitely all the scenes with Caleb and Nerissa and Julian, because I love all three of those characters. Caleb's my favourite character, Nerissa's my favourite villain, and I just love that dynamic and getting to see that play out and see those scenes. All of those scenes on top of Mount Thanos with Caleb and Nerissa are just fantastic. I think they're so well written, you know, where she's telling him about her plans and he's coming back and saying that he doesn't, you know, he knows who he is and he knows that he's a hero and he doesn't give a shit about what Nerissa has to say, and she tries to manipulate him and she tries to use like, oh, you wouldn't even have to hurt Cornelia, and I'm like, you keep her name out of your mouth. But then of course he turns around and he pretends that he's fallen for her spell, and then turns around and grabs the heart off her, which of course doesn't work, but it's a nice try. And she's like, why would you try to take what was freely offered? And then, you know, you haven't listened to a word I've said. And Caleb's like, what, you're ranting about how you're a force for cosmic order? And then she says she'll destroy him, and Julian walks in and goes,
no, you won't. You won't harm our child, Nerissa. If our love could create this magnificent sun, there must have been some good in you. Once.
Then, just this once, I will let you both go. But cross me again, and there will be no mercy, no escape.
Gee, Mom, most kids just get grounded.
And I just love it, because it's like, no, she won't kill Caleb, because she does love Caleb. That's why she locked him inside a cage in Caves for Knowledge twice, because she doesn't actually want to hurt him, because she loves him. And it's just brilliant. And that, for me, is like, just, that's my favourite episode. Hands down. I just love every single second of it. And that's us! We made it to the end! We made it through all 52 episodes. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. Thank you for waiting the week in between each video, because I realise it's a long wait, but you know, gotta maintain the Witch Wednesdays. I'll be back soon with more stuff. I have no idea what, because by the time this goes up it will be 2 weeks from now, so God knows what will have happened in the meantime, but I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for staying with me. I'm so glad that I don't have COVID anymore and I can get back to doing my stuff, my YouTube. My throat is growing. I'm not sure if you can hear, but this is the most I've spoken since I've had COVID, so my throat is absolutely dying, so I'm gonna go now. But thank you for sticking with me. Let me know in the comments below what you think of my Witch episode opinions. Give me your own ranking if you want to, and I'll catch you next time in whatever it is that I do next. See you then.